Birth Association and IndieBirth.com. No material on this podcast should be considered medical advice. Birth is not a medical event.
Welcome to Indie Birth's series of podcasts here on iTunes, Taking Back Birth. Hi everyone, Marin here. You're either a devoted listener or perhaps you're new, and I think I've got you both covered with this podcast. So before I really get into what I'm going to talk about today, it's hard in the social media online world. Certainly not hard in the way building a movement perhaps used to be before those things were around. But the struggles that we encounter mainly are focused around the fact that there's so much information out there that even we're responsible for. I have almost 80. In fact, this might be the 80th podcast. Tons of blog posts and classes and conference. And sometimes it just gets a little confusing. So again, our devoted listeners, this may not be completely new, but I think it will be a great tool to share and pass around as a podcast that tells everyone what we're about. So for the new people, again, I think that will be really valuable. I discovered the other day that iTunes doesn't keep all of our podcasts. It only shows the last, 10 maybe. So people coming to these podcasts new really don't know, unless they go to the Indie Birth site, what we're about exactly. They may get a hint from this topic or that topic. But again, I wanted to kind of have one podcast that was out there, and at least one, maybe there will be more, that just kind of got everything that we believe, or at least a little bit about what we believe. I don't think I can do all of it. A little bit about what we believe and what we're doing all in one place so that people can start to get a clearer picture as to what Indie Birth is about. Before I start, on the note of podcast archives, my wonderful husband did create a really easy link for all of you devoted listeners out there or new listeners to access all 80 plus podcasts. And the link is indiebirth.com/podcast archives. How brilliant is that? So no more searching on iTunes, no more going page after page after page on our website to find the old ones. Just use that link and everything we've done podcast related will be right there. That's also going to be a great link to share when you want to get people listening to these. So what I'm going to present to you today is, again, just a piece of what we consider to be our beliefs, and I'm calling it the Indie Birth Manifesto. Now, that's actually my husband's word. Maybe I'll come up with something better eventually, but he's been sort of nagging me for years, in a very loving way, of course, to write a manifesto. And I might write it as well, but certainly podcasts are easier for me, at least right now. And so I thought I'd put together maybe 10 of the beliefs that are part of the current Indie Birth Manifesto. Now, if you look up manifesto, which of course I had to just to make sure that I was using this word correctly, there is a lot of politics involved, meaning that politicians may create one, but it comes back to the same thing. What are we? Who am I? What do I believe? What do we support? Again, all in one place. So I started working on this last week just as a written document, and I have many, many, many things in the document. I thought today I'd just focus on maybe 10, and I'm just going to kind of pick them out of this document even, so I don't know exactly what I'm going to talk about, but obviously I believe so passionately that all of these things are true about Indie Birth, so it won't be a problem. I also am noticing that in local classes, and probably there will be many more uses of this manifesto. We had a local class this past weekend, and it was the first time I presented it kind of as a PowerPoint type presentation. And I thought it was really helpful because you never know who you're going to get, especially at these local classes. People are from all kinds of belief systems, mainstream and not so much. They may be pregnant, they may not be. So it's really assuming a whole lot to invite people into this space and to want to share with them about Indie Birth and birth, but to not really give them a very great foundation. So just something that had come to me really after doing so many of these that I didn't feel like it was working that well. The birth education part seemed to be working okay, but people were leaving confused about who we are and what we did, and did we attend births or did we not, and all those kind of things. So again, partly for me, but definitely for you and those listening, and definitely great to share. What is Indie Birth about? What is the Indie Birth Manifesto? So here we go. Again, this is just a couple tidbits, really. Maybe I'll keep it to 10, but it's not all inclusive. So first and foremost, Indie Birth represents freedom. Freedom from boundaries, freedom from a specific choice, freedom to connect to ourselves and our babies. And I could extend that list, of course. Freedom to birth where we want, freedom to birth with who we want, etc., etc. Now, I have to give credit to Annika, who's our new social media person and probably new apprentice, which I am so super excited about. She's just amazing and wonderful and is adding so much to Indie Birth in the very short time she's been working with us. And so she was the one who asked me, Marin, what is Indie Birth about? And she wasn't asking because she didn't know. She just wanted me to come up with the one word that I thought represented exactly what we were doing. And so after some thought, that was my word, freedom. I think that covers the bases in lots of ways. So that's what I think, freedom. The next is, birth is a physiological process. Nature has given us a blueprint, and current science supports what we have always known. Birth works. This is a great one, of course, to sneak into a local class or workshop. People are really, starting from basics. So that leads in very nicely to what is a physiological birth, how does that look, and that's how we spend most of the class. But I'm just priming them, right? With this manifesto, I'm saying that this is a scientifically proven concept, nature, that is, and the way birth works. And I want them to know right off the bat that current science does support what we're going to learn in the class. And that really goes, I think, for most of the education classes, workshops we have out there, that there is a sacred side for sure, and I'm going to get to that, but there is definitely a scientific side. Next, birth is also a metaphysical process. Pregnancy and birth are not just physical, but also emotional and spiritual journeys. Each woman experiences this differently. So I can say from the woman's point of view, or the mom's point of view, that I definitely feel that pregnancy and birth are pretty complex. And I also think that for the midwife, that's also true, that if she is able to view these processes as complex and three-dimensional, that she will also be more helpful, most likely as the midwife, and probably be more satisfied herself just in this work. And it made me think that I have a podcast already on metaphysical birth with my friend Melissa, who was working on a book about such things. And you can go back and listen to that one, but it was a really nice chat. She's pretty amazing. And I don't know that I can quote her exactly, but she said something like in the podcast, when comparing like the scientific model to the metaphysical model, that she used a coin as a way to explain it. So in the scientific model, a coin simply has two sides, heads and tails, and that's that. That's all there is to it. And in the metaphysical model, the coin has two sides, but the coin also has edges and whatever is between the two sides. And it depends on how the light might shine on the coin, and that might affect the color and how bright the coin looks, how shiny it is. So I could go on, but you get the drift. Birth is that way. It is not black and white. On to, birth is a sacred process. There is an inherent mystery in pregnancy and birth that will never be removed, but that is usually not acknowledged. So a whole lot in that. And lots of people believe these things too. I don't think these are all completely unique to us. We're just being clear about these beliefs. But birth, really all of life, is a sacred process, not just birth. Birth is just kind of, I said today on Instagram, a spoke on the wheel of initiatory rites of passage or events in our lives. And it is sacred, just as those events are too. I think the inherent mystery to me points to the fact that no matter how much science we have, there will always be things we don't understand and we don't know. And in the larger view context, I don't really think we know much as far as intellectual knowledge about pregnancy and birth. We might think we do, but to me, the sacred process really is the overarching idea, at least for me personally. Next, routine has no place in birth, and especially no place in a powerful birth. Each mama baby is unique, and routine suggests fear and then reinforces the belief that all of us are exactly the same. So I have a podcast on this one too. Go back and listen to Routine. And that one isn't too old, maybe 10, 15 podcasts ago. So you'll hear if you listen to that one that I reflect a lot on the word routine and really kind of digging within myself to figure out what that meant to me. What does that mean? And all I could come up with time and time again, and still do to this day, is that when routine is associated with pregnancy and birth, it is fearful. There is not a routine out there that isn't based on fear, because that's not the basis of something that is done without thinking and is done without reflection and is done without unique consideration to a person. There's only one reason. So I think of something, simple as peeing on a urine stick. When a midwife declares that that's routine for every single woman that walks through her door, that is based on fear. The fear that she may miss something, the fear that, something can go undiagnosed or undetected. Now, I think as midwives, these are fine thoughts to have. We have them. We want to feel like we're covering all of our bases when we're walking with women. So nothing wrong with that. But I think, again, we are reflecting more deeply, whether we're midwives or not, as to what it means when we put that out there into the world, right? So if a midwife is fearful about that, then I think it's best to start by looking inside ourselves and say, why am I scared of that? I mean, it's really not very likely with healthy women. And are there other ways that I would be able to detect that? Or did I have something unfortunate happen that I haven't really processed and I haven't released that fear? And now I'm putting it on every woman that walks through my door. So on the other side, being a mom, all the moms out there that are listening that are pregnant or even not, what place does routine have in your normal, healthy pregnancy? Now, if you make a choice to do something routine, like a urine stick, let's just say, because that is important to you, maybe you've had repeated urinary tract infections, who knows why that's important to you, but you've dug a little deeper and you're not fearful, you just are okay with that. It's not a big deal, and it doesn't feel routine because it feels necessary to you. You don't argue that necessarily every woman should be doing that. So that's not really routine. That's you deciding what's best for you because you're unique, which is how it should be. Next, manifesto statement. A powerful woman will change the world around her. I think that one's probably pretty self-explanatory. Next. Intuition is a valued and valid way of knowing. And that's an old podcast. There's one called something like The Tool You Need to Make Decisions or something like that. It's one of the probably first 10 or 15 podcasts. And in that podcast, I talk in more detail about what intuition is, where we feel it, how we know we have it, how we practice it, even down to some anecdotal study about midwives and intuition and how it's always been, even just as women, it's always been a tool that we've prided ourselves on for the most part and really had at our disposal and really trusted. And it's really only in the modern world that it's looked down upon, that it's, hocus pocus or hippie or something like that. It is a valid way of knowing in the context of a more holistic model or the wise woman model. It is not considered a valid way of knowing in the scientific model or the mainstream medical world. It's just not. But that doesn't mean that we can't hone our intuition, that we can't trust it or use it exclusively if that's how we want to do it. And of course, there's many combinations. Many people will use intuition in combination with other information. But the point is that it is a valid way of making decisions. And as midwives, I think, or doulas or whatever, or as friends, we can support people in making choices that way. Next, there is no us and them. Each choice and option exists as part of ourselves that needs to be expressed or healed. So, what I'm saying specifically here, I think, is that there really isn't even a medical world that we're trying to get away from and our little world we've created. There really aren't, people that want to make women and, pregnant women miserable and hate them and all of that, and those that don't. We're all people, we're all humans. People are just at different stages of their own growth, their own evolution, and that's reflected in the world. So certainly we agree, right, as humans here on Earth, that we all have pain, we all have suffering, we all have anger, we all have grief. We are all of those things. So when we see something manifested in the world, like a medical system that is broken, we just realize and notice that there's also a part of us that is broken. And while we try to heal that ourselves, we also focus positively on creating the world we want to see. We know that hurt and pain and anger exist, but we also know that by focusing on it, we give it power. So again, it's not so much people, us against them. It's just belief systems that are out there that represent all of us, that represent all of our fears, and we can pick and choose where we want to be at any given time. And that doesn't make us better, but it does make us aware that what we're feeling and what we're believing can be manifested out in the actual physical world. Next, freedom in birth is not really confined to a particular place or person. Freedom comes from releasing the paradigm of fear and belief that someone else knows more about you than you do. So again, this is similar to the last manifesto statement. It's getting away from that idea that there are bad people or bad places. There aren't. We can achieve our own freedom, and that's the indie birth word. We can achieve freedom in birth in our lives by realizing that we're responsible, that we can release the paradigm of fear, and we don't ever have to accept that someone knows more than we do about ourselves. So, when people talk about location, certainly I'm not a hospital birth advocate, but I would say for sure that there are all kinds of creative situations that women could potentially choose from for their births in this ideal world that would kind of blow our minds. We're so confined now even to our own little box, right, of home birth and midwives, and that's not the only option either. That shouldn't be the only option. So you can come up with all kinds of creative things as far as what that might mean and be really surprised by other people doing what we do. There certainly are obstetricians like Dr. Stewart out there who are doing amazing work and really serving women. And he totally breaks the mold, right? It's not like you would think that based on his label of being a doctor. So again, I think we have to remain open-minded. And really, if we're walking with women or we're in our own pregnancies and our goal is freedom from any kind of box, then that's the best place to be. Next manifesto belief. Trusting in birth is like trusting in any natural process. It is nearly always perfect, or we would not all be here. That usually always gets kind of a giggle at the local classes. Maybe it's an uncomfortable giggle, I don't know. But I think people also just hear the simple truth in that. Getting back to the place where birth isn't super complicated, and it becomes easier for us on all levels is not something that's crazy. We know we are evolving every day, the human race, and of course the goal is, I think, to evolve to a higher vibration where, we just trust ourselves and our bodies in the process more. So some women, some people need more intellectual knowledge for that to happen. Some need more spiritual growth, whatever it takes for people to realize that if this didn't work, we wouldn't all be here. Next, manifesto belief. What the medical paradigm says or does or suggests is of no interest to us. There is no relevancy when fear is the guiding force. Now, this one sounds like a bit of a contradiction after what I just said, doesn't it? There is no us or them. Right. And I was, as I said, kind of referring more to groups of people. We are all one, for lack of a better way of saying it. But there does exist different belief systems. And yes, they all are part, again, of maybe a bigger belief system, but the medical paradigm does operate on fear. So whatever paradigm it is that operates on fear, I think we don't need it. If we're moving ahead, if we're moving out of that, we're not even paying that much attention. We're just saying that inside of us is trust and love, and that's what we're going to create. So on that note, though, I have to say, many of you probably saw it on Facebook a bunch of weeks ago. People were posting all kinds of stuff, and people do this all the time. I don't always see these sorts of things, but lots of people in the birth world are posting, the ACOG or, the American College of Gynecologists. Every time they come out with some kind of statement, the natural birth people like you or me or whoever get all worked up and start posting it and commenting on how dumb it is and how wrong it is and how stupid it is and how horribly they treat women. And while all those things could be true, again, it's giving energy to that paradigm. I don't care what ACOG does. I don't. It doesn't mean I don't care about women who are in that situation, but I can't fix it for them. They're in that situation, perhaps because that's what they need. And my personal passion is to steer ourselves away from engaging that fear. So again, it might seem helpful by posting these things. What's their latest update? But I don't see how it's really relevant. So again, I mean that in the most loving, kind way. But what ACOG does, for example, is of no interest to me. I don't care. And I don't really think my paying attention to it would really help anything anyway. It would only add to the agitation and sense of victimhood that women have already around birth. So what's the point of that? Just forget them. Next and last, this is a shorter sort of podcast today. Next and last manifesto statement. A woman can and should choose from the full spectrum of choices available to her, her choice being made from within herself. There is nothing off limits when she has determined what is right for her. That comes back to the wise woman model. I've talked a lot about that on podcasts. I think I have at least two. Probably one about the wise woman circle, which is based on that whole system. And then another one just simply on the wise woman tradition herself. And that tradition, if you don't know, is again based on the woman at the center. She is the center of her spiral. She is intuitive, she is smart, she is connected, and any choice that she wants to make, whether it's, I don't know what, unassisted birth, or whether it's getting an ultrasound, all of those things are in her world because she's powerful and she has full access to every possibility. There is nothing off limits that has a label of being bad or good because those labels don't apply to her. So that's pretty exciting, I think, as we think about the future, that we get away from that black and white, that us and them. There is nothing off limits to a powerful woman. She knows what she needs, and what an amazing thing we can do for ourselves and for her to support that belief. So I think that's a great place to end. Thanks for listening to this shorter podcast. More from the Indie Birth Manifesto to come, I'm sure, in future, that's what I mean, future podcasts, as well as presentations and different ways to get this information out there. I think we'll be pretty creative in thinking of that. As for us at Indie Birth, as always, we have our Wise Women Circle, and that's indiebirth.com/circle. We have amazing teachers and just a really fabulous group of women who are always learning and connecting together virtually, so you don't have to be local to enjoy that. We are offering skills workshops for midwives a couple times a year. We just finished one last week, and it was pretty intense. So I think we'll make some good changes to that and probably be ready to go again in another couple months. The Indie Birth Midwifery Conference is coming up in March 2017, so check indiebirth.com/conference, and we will have the speakers and sessions up really soon. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day.